It happened during one of those long, dragging summers when I was sent to stay with my uncle in the countryside. My parents always said it was good for me, fresh air, open land, and no city noise. But there was something about my uncle's place that never sat right with me. Maybe it was the way the house creaked at night even when there was no wind, or how the animals on his land always seemed a little too quiet, like they were listening, or hiding something. Uncle Roy wasn't the warmest person. He barely talked unless he needed something done. He had these hard, cold eyes that never quite looked at you, just through you. He owned a few chickens, some goats, and one old donkey that stood tied up under a crooked shed in the backyard. The donkey didn't have a name, he just called it the thing. Said it was useless but kept it around anyway. I always thought that was strange. The animal looked half blind and barely moved, but my uncle would check on it more than anything else on the farm. Sometimes, I'd catch him whispering to it late at night when he thought I was asleep. The first few days were boring but normal. I helped with chores, stacked firewood, and tried to stay out of his way. But things started to shift around the end of the first week. That's when he began waking me up before dawn, making me go out back with him. Time to learn the family ways, he'd say, his voice low and dry. I didn't know what he meant, and honestly, I didn't want to ask. He never explained things, just ordered, and you followed. Then, early one morning, he handed me a rusted lantern and told me to follow him into the backyard. The air was thick and still. No birds. No wind. Just the sound of our boots crunching on the dry grass. He led me past the barn, past the well, and straight to the donkey's shed. The animal was already awake, staring at me like it had been waiting. Uncle Roy stood behind me and said, "What happens back here stays between us. Understand?" His voice had a sharp edge now, something colder than before. I nodded, even though my stomach had started to twist. He handed me a strange object wrapped in burlap. I could feel it pulsing slightly in my hands, warm and wet like it had its own heartbeat. I looked at him, waiting for some kind of explanation, but all he said was, "Do it. Now." My hands were shaking. I tried to unwrap the thing, but before I could fully uncover it, the donkey let out the strangest sound I'd ever heard, almost like it was speaking. I froze. My uncle didn't flinch. In fact, he looked pleased. That's when I realized, whatever this was, it wasn't about farm work. And that was just the beginning. I couldn't move. My hand still held the burlap-wrapped object, and I could feel something slick soaking through the cloth. The donkey, if that's even what it really was, stood frozen, eyes locked on mine like it knew something I didn't. My uncle just stood there in the dim glow of the lantern, watching me with that same blank expression, like this was routine for him. Like this was just another morning chore. I finally got the nerve to speak. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. Just nodded at the bundle in my hands and repeated, "Do it." I couldn't figure out what it even meant. I wanted to drop the thing, walk away, pretend this wasn't happening, but something about the way my uncle was standing made it clear that wasn't an option. Back when I was younger, before Mom stopped talking to him, she used to say Uncle Roy wasn't right in the head. She never gave details, just shook her head and told me not to ask questions. I remembered her face now, that tight look of worry whenever his name came up. But my parents had been desperate for help this summer, and he was the only family close enough to take me in. A week ago, I'd have said he was just a grumpy old man. But now, standing in the middle of a dead-silent backyard with a staring donkey and something pulsing in my hands, I wasn't so sure. This wasn't just weird, it felt wrong, like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't understand. I finally peeled back a corner of the burlap, just enough to see dark, thick liquid glistening underneath. It didn't look like anything from the farm. It wasn't mud. It wasn't oil. And it sure didn't smell like either. The scent that hit me was coppery, sweet, and old, like something had been buried too long and was just now waking up. "What is this?" I asked again, more forcefully this time. He leaned in close. It's part of the deal. Our family owes a debt. My heart skipped. To what? He didn't answer. Just turned and walked back toward the house, the lantern swinging in his hand. Don't let it go to waste, he said over his shoulder. I stood there for what felt like forever, the weight of the bundle pulling at my arms. The donkey, or whatever it really was, hadn't moved an inch, but I swear its eyes followed me, glowing faintly in the shadows. I had the sudden, awful feeling that if I looked away or tried to run, it would come after me. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the thing in the burlap, the way my uncle said our family owed something. I started remembering stories my mom used to tell me when I was little, old folk tales about bargains made under blood moons, about creatures that wore animal shapes but weren't animals at all. I used to think she was just being dramatic. But maybe she was trying to warn me. The next morning, the bundle was gone. So was the donkey. But there were footprints, deep, wide, and not human, leading from the shed into the woods. And my uncle? He was already out there, waiting for me with something else in his hands. The morning air was colder than usual, and a thin layer of fog had settled over the backyard. I hesitated at the porch steps, staring into the woods where the strange footprints had disappeared. My uncle was already at the edge of the trees, motioning for me to come. He held a small wooden box in one hand and a coil of rope in the other. I didn't ask questions this time, I just followed, even though every part of me screamed not to. We walked deeper into the forest, the sound of our boots muffled by the thick layer of wet leaves. The trees closed in around us, tall and twisted, like they were growing in the wrong direction. After a while, the woods became unnaturally quiet. No birds. No wind. Just the occasional snap of a branch behind us, even when we weren't moving. What happened to the donkey? I finally asked, breaking the silence. My uncle didn't look at me. It served its purpose, he said. Now it's your turn to carry the offering. Offering. That word stuck with me. I glanced down at the box he was holding, wondering what could be inside. He never let me get a good look at anything. Everything about this place felt like it was hiding something, behind every shed, every tree, every word left unsaid. I started thinking maybe this wasn't about farming or debt or even family. Maybe it was something older, something darker. As we reached a small clearing surrounded by blackened tree trunks, he stopped. In the middle of the clearing was a stone circle, half covered in moss and leaves. It looked ancient, like it had been forgotten for a long time. But the ground inside the circle was clean. No debris, no growth. Just dark, packed soil, like something had been moving in and out of it recently. He set the box in the center, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. You need to finish what I started. It has to be you. I didn't know what he meant. Finish what? Why me? I wanted to run, to get out of those woods and never look back. But at the same time, something about the place pulled at me, like it was inside my bones now. I didn't want to admit it, but part of me remembered this place. Not with words, but with feelings, like something buried deep inside was starting to wake up. As my uncle turned and left me there, the air grew colder, and I heard something moving in the trees behind me, slow, heavy footsteps, circling the clearing. And when I opened the box, it was empty. But the ground began to shake. The box sat open at my feet, empty, yet somehow heavier than before. The clearing around me pulsed with quiet pressure, like the forest itself was holding its breath. The ground trembled in short, shallow bursts, like something beneath it was moving, shifting, getting closer. My throat felt dry, my heart pounding so loud I thought whatever was in those woods would hear it. I looked around for my uncle, but he was gone. Just gone. No sound of footsteps, no rustling branches. He had left me there without warning, like he knew exactly what was coming. Like he planned it. The air grew thicker, colder. I could see my breath now, even though it was supposed to be summer. A low hum filled the clearing, deep and hollow, not like any animal sound I'd heard before. It felt old. Not just strange, but ancient, like the earth was remembering something it had once tried to forget. I backed away from the stone circle, but the trees seemed closer than before. The path we came in on was gone. All around me, the forest had twisted itself into a wall of black bark and shadow. I was trapped. Then I saw it. Something stepped into the clearing, slow and deliberate, just past the tree line. I couldn't see its full shape, only glimpses, long limbs that bent the wrong way, skin like cracked earth, and eyes that burned faint orange through the fog. It didn't rush. It didn't need to. It knew I had nowhere to go. I thought maybe it would come for me directly, but instead, it walked toward the box. Its head tilted like it was disappointed, confused. Then it looked at me, not just looked, but saw me. I felt exposed, like it was pulling memories from behind my eyes. My knees almost gave out. This thing wasn't from any farm, or forest, or nightmare. It felt like it came from under everything, below time, beneath the dirt, crawling through the roots of the world. Then it spoke. Not with a mouth, but in my head. Its voice was cracked and whispery, like wind moving through a grave. The offering is missing. The words echoed inside me, sinking into my bones. I couldn't speak. Couldn't even scream. My hands still smelled like the burlap from earlier, and I suddenly wondered, was that thing ever in the box at all? Or had it been inside me the whole time? The ground beneath the stone circle cracked, revealing a deep, black opening. Not a hole, but a tunnel. Something below moved, shifting with long, wet sounds, like it had been waiting for this moment. That's when I heard footsteps again, behind me this time. I turned quickly. It was my uncle. But his face was different. He wasn't alone. And in his arms was the real offering. My uncle stepped into the clearing, his boots leaving no sound against the cracked earth. But it wasn't just him anymore. His arms cradled something wrapped in the same burlap as before, but this one twitched, softly, like it was still alive. My breath caught. The creature in the clearing turned its burning eyes from me to him, and the hum in the air deepened. Almost pleased. Then my uncle spoke, not to me, but to it. Forgive the delay. He wasn't ready. His voice wasn't quite right. It had changed, lower, more gravel in it, like something was speaking through him. I stepped back, my mind spinning. Not ready? What had I been brought here for if not this? And then it hit me. I was never the offering. I was the replacement. The thing in his arms moved again, and this time, part of the burlap fell away. What I saw underneath turned my stomach. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't even fully human. It had a twisted face, part of it like mine, the other part, wrong. Bloated and pale like it had been rotting from the inside out. And it was wearing a shirt just like the one I'd arrived in on my first day at the farm. I stumbled back, my legs barely holding me. What is that? I whispered. My uncle turned to me slowly. It's you, he said. The first one. That's when everything cracked open inside my head. Memories I didn't know I had flooded in, strange dreams I'd been having since the second night at the farm. Waking up in the barn with dirt under my nails. Seeing the donkey standing over my bed when I swore I had locked the door. Hearing voices whisper my name through the floorboards. I hadn't been staying at the farm for a few weeks. I'd been here before. And whatever had happened the first time, they hadn't finished it. The creature moved closer to the stone circle. The box at my feet began to tremble, even though it was still empty. The ground pulsed harder now, and the tunnel below gaped wider, like it was hungry. And just as I turned to run, my uncle said something that froze me in place. We only needed your shadow this time. The body's already been claimed. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. We only needed your shadow this time. I didn't know what that meant, not really, but somewhere deep inside, I understood enough to be afraid. The ground beneath the stone circle groaned like it was about to open completely, and that awful hum from the creature grew louder, vibrating through my bones. My uncle stepped closer to the pit, holding that twisted, half-living version of me like it was a gift. The creature watched him closely, head tilted, almost reverent. It raised one long, jagged arm and pointed toward the circle. A signal. A demand. Then the creature spoke again, this time aloud. The voice was broken, echoing like it had traveled from underground. One soul is not enough. The debt is greater now. My uncle froze. For the first time, his expression cracked. No, he said quickly. You agreed. One body. One mind. The creature stepped forward, its cracked skin shifting like stone under pressure. That was before. The boy remembers. The seal is broken. Suddenly, I realized what they had tried to do. This wasn't just about sacrifice. This was about binding something. Hiding it. Sealing it away using blood, memory, and lies. And now that I remembered who I was, or who I had been, the deal they made no longer worked. My uncle turned to me, eyes wild. You weren't supposed to wake up, he growled. We buried that version of you. We made a new one. You were never meant to know. The pit burst open with a roar, and wind rushed up from the darkness, filled with ash and the stench of burning wood. The forest shook. The creature opened its mouth, and a terrible sound poured out, a mix of laughter and howling, like the voices of everything that had ever been lost. I ran. But as I did, something grabbed my ankle. I looked down and saw fingers, my own fingers, gripping my leg. The thing my uncle had carried was no longer in his arms. It was crawling after me, mouth wide, eyes dull. It spoke in my voice, you left me here. I kicked free and scrambled back into the trees. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away from that clearing, from the pit, from him. Then the forest snapped silent. No wind. No sound. I turned back. The creature was gone. So was the pit. My uncle lay alone in the circle, unmoving. The burlap sack sat next to him, empty again. I stumbled out of the woods by morning, covered in cuts and dirt. When I reached the farmhouse, it was gone. Nothing but a broken chimney in the grass. But when I passed a mirror later, muddy and cracked in an old gas station bathroom, I stopped cold. My reflection wasn't mine. It was his. I stared into that mirror, frozen, hoping my eyes were just playing tricks on me. But the reflection staring back wasn't mine, it was him. Same face, but older. Eyes too dark. A strange scar I didn't recognize running down the jawline. I blinked, and so did he, but half a second off. Not like a mirror. Like a memory trying to catch up. I left the gas station in a daze, the world around me feeling wrong, like the colors were just slightly off. I kept walking down the road, trying to make sense of everything. The farmhouse, the creature, the circle, it all felt like a dream. But the ache in my legs, the dirt under my nails, the blood drying in my shirt told me it was real. Every second of it. Over the next few days, I tried to go back to a normal life. I stayed with a family friend in town. I didn't tell them anything. Who would believe me? I told them I got lost, that my uncle had gone missing. The police did a quick search but found nothing, no house, no clearing, no signs of life on that old property. As far as the town was concerned, Uncle Roy had never been there. But I knew better. And so did the thing in the mirror. It followed me. At first, it was just reflections. I'd catch him staring at me in windows, glossy surfaces, the backs of spoons. Always watching, always one step behind. Sometimes smiling. Sometimes mimicking movements I didn't make. Then came the dreams. Long, dark tunnels. That hum in my ears. Whispers in my own voice. I remembered more over time. Not just the forest, but what came before. How our family had made that first deal generations ago. How every few decades, one of us was chosen. A shadow exchanged to keep the rest safe. But my uncle had broken the cycle when he hesitated. When he tried to trick it. And I had paid the price. I realized the thing that crawled after me in the clearing wasn't a creature, it was me. A version of me that had been left behind, like a cocoon. And now that it was loose, it wanted to finish the trade. The reflection grew bolder. Last night, I woke up and saw him standing at the end of my bed. No mirror. Just standing there. Same scar. Same eyes. He didn't say anything. Just smiled, like he was finally where he belonged. So I packed a bag. I'm heading back to the forest. I don't know what I'll find, if the circle's still there, if the pit will open again. But I have to end this, once and for all. Maybe I can make a new deal. Maybe I can finish what my uncle started. Or maybe I'll disappear like the rest of them did. Whatever happens, if someone finds this, if you're watching this, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just asking you not to follow.